was right. Yeah. Hey everybody, today we're debating evolution on trial, and we are starting right now with Taylor, aka Snake's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Snake. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. All right, so I guess evolution on trial tonight, and in order to challenge evolution, these guys need to define a hard limit on how much a population can change. And I will continuously point out that they're unable to do this throughout the debate, so keep an eye out for that. There's no genetic limits. There's no morphological limits that they can point to that would go against evolution. I'm not trying to say that there are no limits, period, but that would prevent evolution. Every attempt to put on like genetic limits are entirely arbitrary and either separates humans and apes while dividing up their declared kinds, like all cats and are unrelated to all other cats, and that would overload the arc, or it gives them roughly the kinds they want, except that it puts humans and apes as the same kind. So all attempts of that have failed. There has been no attempt to define morphological limits, but these are necessary to challenge this idea and the consensus. In order to challenge scientific consensus that has already been proven to the vast majority of the experts, one must be qualified in the subject and give good evidence. They have neither. Actually, I'm not sure about Victoria, but what will not work as a challenge to evolution is to point out some hole in the scientific understanding and say it's not possible to know it, and therefore God can fill it. That is a fallacy which must be dismissed out of hand. I'm compelled to dismiss fallacies, or else I'm being irrational. Evolution has been on trial in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial. No surprises here, but evolution won, even with a conservative judge. So in order for a concept to be scientific, it must have scientific applications, which basically means it has to have novel testable predictions if it's a model. Creationism has zero, evolution has many, based on common descent, like transitional species, Archaeopteryx Tiktaalik are the famous ones. Creationist has no reason to predict those even exist. Multiple lines of evidence cross-confirm each other. And at this point, I'd like to share my screen. All right, is that working?
Yep.
Okay. So genetic clocks line up with geological and radiometric clocks. And if these are wrong, if the Earth is young, the amount of radiation alone would melt the Earth. So certainly not a possibility. Let's see. All right, advance the slide. Come on. Okay. ERVs are DNA elements that viruses inserted into ancient genomes, which are inherited. Since they're all the result of infections in random areas of the genome, they make for very good markers of ancestry, since the likelihood that two species would get infected by the same virus in the same place is virtually nothing. Just for 205 shared HERVWs, that's one class of HRVs, humans and chimps share 205 of 213, I think. These are the chances of just that shared placement. That's about 588 with 1,416 zeros after it, I think. So basically, and that's like several orders more molecules that are even in the universe. So mathematically impossible for humans not to be descended from apes, which is, of course, the most offensive relationship to creationists, obviously. And that's only one class of ERVs, and that's only one class of transposable elements that also trace ancestry. So that's a major thing, but my favorite point is basically that every single difference between populations in life's history is already accounted for by observable microevolution that they accept. We know that the size, shape, orientation, location, number, and chemical composition of bones, organs, and tissues can change within accepted biblical kinds, and creationists accept this. These are slides from Call Me Emo, and as he beautifully demonstrates, the amount of accepted variation within kinds is larger than the gaps between them. Variation is covered by transitional forms. But if creationists insist transitional forms are their own kind, they shoot themselves in the foot, since now the range of accepted diversity overlaps the gaps, meaning there's absolutely no reasonable barriers between any of the kinds. And that's because they're so close morphologically to two different kinds. If the transitional forms are explained as being part of either kinds, this just shrinks the gap between between the original two to non-existence, resulting in a unified kind. So the amount of creationist accepted variation within kinds, such as in coelacanth, is so large that it's the same as the difference between fishes that creationists consider not related. Variation within kind is larger than the gaps between kinds. Creationist orgs admit Mesohippus is an ancestral horse, but that's actually more similar to that of tapirs, which they arbitrarily separate for absolutely no reason. The foot structure of creationist accepted horse kind varies wildly from 4 toes to 1. That's major coordinated structural change. Variation within kind is larger than between them. This is an inconsistent standard, and thus any doubts as to relationships are unreasonable and irrational by definition. Comparative anatomy is viewed as valid to draw a relation within kinds, but is arbitrarily dropped whenever creationists feel like it. So I would ask how they know that ceratopsids are related. They'll say anatomy. Then you ask them humans, they'll just draw an arbitrary line. They also claim to be able to identify fossil snakes from just jawbones or vertebra alone. Yet they drop comparative anatomy whenever convenient. Bermanology, the creationist term for classifying each kind, demonstrates this self-defeating problem. As Bermans declared, clusters of morphological similarity organisms that fit this pattern in clusters appear, and then larger gaps lie between them. Those are declared Bermans as clusters. But as more fossils are discovered, the distance between like aves, birds, and dromaeosaur dinosaurs like velociraptors collapsed, and the variation within kind exceeded the distance between the variation between kinds. Whoops. So could these be the same kind? There's no way for a creationist to tell. What about these? All that separates is slight proportional differences of the same bones, aka microevolution. Same here, microevolution. Same here, microevolution, but when we add them all together, we see macroevolution. So why can't these accepted microchanges add up in the same lineage? There's no answer to this. Slight variation of existing structures is observable, like flexing of fins for walking limbs, folding of teeth to make fangs, which there are half-evolved transitional forms to this day, yet still functional. Theory of life being connected gives us predictions about the fossil record, predictions that the inconsistent and vague creationist hypothesis cannot make, thus making evolution scientific by definition. Organisms don't suddenly spout rings, they modify them from existing structures. Plants are amazing examples of macroevolution. These are all related plants because they can graft and breed with each other. They have different body plans though, such as broccolis and mustards. Fractal patternicity in Romanesco broccoli is an example of functional information evolving without intelligent design. We've observed single cellular organisms evolving into multicellular. There's major bone changes, numbers of bones, functional changes in bones of creationist accepted kinds, new muscle groups evolving in mammals that they accept are related. That's why there's vestigial structures like nails on manatees and seals, legs develop on whales and snakes in vitro. So what separates these monkeys from lemurs? Nothing, because they agree the same thing can happen in dogs. This happens in the same species of fish, different functional conformations. So at what point do these changes stop accumulating? And that will be one of my major sticking points tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening statement. We'll kick it over to Snake's partner for the remaining roughly 4 minutes or so for his opening as well, in terms of the, you could say, argument on behalf of evolution. I'm going to minimize your screen, Snake, aka Taylor. And with that, thanks so much for being with us. Atheist Jr., the floor is all yours.
Yeah, could you share my screen now?
You bet.
Okay. So the title of this debate is Evolution on Trial. So let's remember that in the scientific community, there's no debate about whether or not evolution happened in the past and continues to happen. We are still evolving, and that's not controversial. Evolution, as well as the religious concept of intelligent design, which is not a scientific theory, they both have been on trial in the past. It didn't go well for ID. On December 20th, 2005, in Kitzmiller versus Dover, the district court Judge John Jones ordered the Dover Area School Board to refrain from maintaining an intelligent design policy in any school within the Dover Area District. Now, Judge Jones wrote that ID is not science and cannot be judged as valid accepted scientific theory as it has failed to publish in peer-reviewed journals, engage in research and testing, and gain acceptance in the scientific community. This was the first challenge to the constitutionality of teaching intelligent design in the public school science classroom. And you could see that the front page news in Denver, or in Pennsylvania, I guess, was that ID is not science. And let's look at just some quick evidence about creationism and what they say about kinds. And creationists somehow accept major chromosomal translocations and mutations in horses, something they say is impossible for human in evolution. Everything they say is made up ad hoc just to try to refute a specific fact they don't like, but nothing's derived from a central thesis other than God did it, which I think we saw in my last debate on here. So you'll see that they say that horses and donkeys can be the same kind, which are separated by 2 chromosomes. But if you ask them, are humans and chimps the same kind? They would say no, even though they only have a difference of 2 chromosomes, just like these. And these animals are more fit than their fossil ancestors that have more toes than them and more fit for horsey things. Now, some otters can be very weasel-like, while others not so much, and still others look like they're on the cusp of being seals with their paddle-like flipper feet. Remember, creationists admitted that these evolved from weasels. They're all in the same kind, so they admit flippers can evolve from terrestrial feet, and we have more or less seal-like versions in otter variations. Sea otters are closer to seals, while river otters are more like flat-footed swimming weasels. And we can see in the fossil record animals that look like a combination of bears and dogs or seals and dogs. We get a transition where it's getting impossible to tell which category they're in. Like if you look at the transition between theropod dinosaurs to what look like modern birds, it gets to a point where paleontologists can't tell which category they're in because they have the traits of both. And I think Snake showed this slide as well, but it basically just shows that when it comes to specifically human evolution, this is a problem for creationists, and because they're biblical literalists. So if you want to take Genesis literally, then it's going to be a conflict between the idea that humans were created as we are today, walking upright, intelligent, with very little body hair, and intelligent to speak English, versus the fact that we had a common ancestor with bonobos and chimps and other apes. So this is the primary conflict. This is the reason why they don't want to accept evolution. And, I'll just end my presentation there because Snake's was a little bit longer than mine. So
you got it. And with that, we're going to jump into the opening statements from, you could say, the anti-evolution side. But before we do, I want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from. We're thrilled to have you here. Hit that subscribe button as we have many more juicy debates coming up. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, it will be a juicy, controversial one this Sunday. Is Islam true? Between Muhammad and apostate prophet. You don't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button. With that, thank you very much. BGG and Maddox, the floor is all yours.
Yes, I'll go first as I'm new here. All right, then. First, gonna get an audio test. Everything good? All right then. Evolution smacks of human invention and confabulation. What there is a lot of claims about an engine of evolution and the possibility of life through deep time and random mutations becomes constructive in order, all of which are stipulated to exist, but none of which are demonstrated to exist. There's a striking absence of evidence where one should expect to find it, unless you want to propose and imagine and verify possibility of evolution where one would not expect to have evidence. Yeah, we have no demonstration of evolution being possible or even likely. We don't even have confirmed accounts of evolution. What there is linguistic sleight of hand semantics, in which devolution is treated and presented as evolution. But this is nothing more than use of Orwellian doublethink. It's akin to saying subtraction is addition, losing is gaining, slavery is freedom. Devolution is evolution. And that's really my intro.
Kick it over to Maddox as well, then. Thanks very much, Maddox. The floor is all yours.
Well, it's good to be back here on the one and only MDD. I'm actually trying out something new. I am streaming live, everybody, from Centennial Park here in Nashville. Behind me is not a backdrop. It's actually a full-size replica of the Greek Parthenon. Thought it'd be fun to try some out here. So, James, thanks for inviting me on for this debate. It's kind of interesting listening to our opponents in their opening statements. I wonder if they forgot that this is evolution on trial. It's their position that is on trial, not alternative models. So, this isn't about defending creationism, YEC, OEC, theistic evolution, any of those models. That has nothing to do with tonight's debate. So why 90% of y'all's opening statements was all about those positions doesn't really make any sense to me if you're actually making a case for yours. Or perhaps you are just operating from the usual Evo Atheist on YouTube position, which is, oh, consensus is X, therefore it must be 100% true. Therefore, I'm not actually going to analyze my own position. I'm just going to try and deflect over to somebody else's, which I find very interesting. You know, you get into things like the bush or the orchard of organisms from origin of life that potentially, especially on the protein level, potentially defeats the entire premise of universal common ancestry. You have all of the issues with gene regulatory networks that are necessary for new body plans to exist. We have the recent discoveries that there's dramatically controlled mutations inside of coding regions, but it's much more open in the non-coding regions. However, the evolutionists want to use similarities in the coding regions of the genome to somehow be the proof beyond all doubt of their position. We're actually finding out that it's being much more controlled. One of the favorite talking points right now, which I'm very fascinated to see how long it takes for this one to be shuffled under the rug like so many in the past, but like ERVs, for example, right? So we now know beyond doubt that it's essential to all sorts of stages of embryo development. We know that many of them work in conjunction with things like P53 in order to stop cancer tumors, have the ability to mimic viruses and be able to operate with the immune system to take out different things. It actually kind of looks like they're defense mechanisms, which I always find very interesting, and people don't think about that. Then you get into stuff like, oh, well, it must be a endogenous retrovirus because, well, we need things like reverse transcriptase, all these kind of things. Well, I guess they weren't paying attention to the fact that the discoveries in relation to something that was also called junk and therefore evidence of evolution up until about 2 years ago, the polymerase theta. Turns out it actually has a higher fidelity rate of RNA to DNA than the HIV reverse transcriptase. So there's so many different things that keep being discovered, which completely, negate or at a minimum decimate the, dogmatic positions that are taken by so many of the folks that, defend these positions. And I find it so funny that in relation to, I forget which one of them said it, but it was, oh, well, if you don't have, the piece of paper that makes you an expert in XYZ, therefore you're not allowed to actually really have positions or challenge a position. But to my knowledge, neither one of these guys have those pieces of paper either, but or on the flip side, have really investigated alternative arguments. So are you qualified to even be having this conversation, or are we all here able to use our intellect and be able to analyze the arguments, the evidence, and be able to reach conclusions and potentially challenge the status quo? Because it's not like there aren't things like the third way in evolution that are challenging the conventional paradigm and saying, oh, we need things like extended synthesis and, the standard models aren't really working. So, I mean, all these things are, growing rapidly to denigrate the dogmatic position that's taken by so many folks on YouTube. Now, something I found extraordinarily fascinating from Snake Was Right was trying to use the 5.88 to the 10 to the 1088th power, whatever it was, or 1400 power, whatever that was. It's so funny that number would indicate a probability of 0 or just not being possible in this context for ERV placements, but dramatically even more improbable things for just the formation of genes in general and overall, transcription translation factors, all that kind of stuff. The numbers are exponentially larger than that. But in the conversations these guys have both had, they claim that, oh, well, there's a possibility therefore. So how are you going to say on one side that this gigantic probability number equals not possible without it being your worldview? but completely utilize the opposite context to reject opposing positions on the plausibility of these other things actually coming to be. So I think, folks, as you listen throughout the open discussion we're going to have, just make sure you pay attention to the fact that there's going to be dramatic attempts to deflect and not actually defend their own position, and to somehow claim that this is all about God of the gaps and all the things like Atheist Jr. were saying, when in reality, this is about the weaknesses in evolution, which is what's on trial, not whether or not God did it. I yield.
You got it. Thank you very much. And we're going to jump into open conversation, everybody's favorite. Want to let you know little channel housekeeping stuff. In particular, our guests are linked in the description. Keep that in mind throughout the debate, as well as they're also linked at the podcast, as every debate from Modern Day Debate ends up at the podcast, where our guests, such as Atheist Jr., Snake, BGG, and John Maddox, are linked as well in the description box there. Last but not least, a lot of people are like, hey, what about an intelligent design on trial debate or creation on trial debate? We would be thrilled to host it. If you'd be interested in doing that debate, you can reach me at moderndaydebate@gmail.com, as we are very open to having those topics. It just so happened that people were especially into evolution on trial as of late. But with that, gentlemen, thanks very much. The floor is all yours.
So how would you reconstruct the relationships between organisms that you accept are related, if not by morphological similarity?
Well, here I have a very low criteria for evidence for evolution. So, for example, can I share my screen? Okay. All right then. So, to the anti-evolution stance would say these are not the result of evolution. So, how do I exit? Oh, I'm gonna share a different screen. So my question is simple. So since my criteria for evidence for evolution is very simple, according to evolution, there are many transitionals between the wolf-like ancestor and the Dalmatian. So my question would be, give me at least one transitional between the wolf and the Dalmatian. If you can't present this transitional, you have no evidence. That means it's just hypothetical.
It would be the child of that wolf.
What is that?
That is a slightly different version, because children are not exact clones of their parents.
Okay, there has to be.
So are either of you going to answer my question?
I want to. Forgive me 1 second for jumping in. I do want to say, Bubblegum Gun, this is my fault, because I know that I told you to bring the mic a little bit closer right before we started, but it's a little bit too close. If you're able to bring it back just a little bit further.
Is that better?
And that should be better. And I'll try to adjust it in OBS in terms of getting your volume up higher. Go ahead.
Okay.
So is this an answer to my question, or?
Well, I'm presenting a question because you're on trial. This is evolution.
You kind of changed the topic, though.
No, this is evolution on trial. This is the topic of the debate.
Yeah,
okay,
it's a discussion portion. I asked a question.
Well,
would you like me to repeat it?
Well, you guys are on trial. That's the thing.
I think his question was related to evolution, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is. So you're saying, so is this transitional?
Wait, so James, is this a interrogation or is this just discussion?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys. I mean, this is
so you can pass my question if you want.
Oh, we can get to it. I'm presenting. This is my criteria for evolution. It's very simple. This is bottom of the barrel.
Yeah,
okay.
I answered it.
Okay, what is that? Are you just saying the wolf is the ancestor of the wolf? So are you saying a wolf gave direct birth to a Dalmatian?
That's not what you asked. You asked, what is give me an example of a transition between that wolf and the Dalmatian. And the answer is the child of the wolf. What do you mean?
Well, what is it? Okay, here, let me see. Let me show you a picture of what I mean.
I mean, are you looking for something that's half wolf, half dog? Because
no, I'm looking for an intermediate. Okay, here, how do I share my screen again? Okay.
I mean, what's with the hippograph or I forget what you call those animals. What's with the picture in the middle? Yeah. Why is that there? Is that what you think that we think evolution is?
No, I'm asking you. See these nodes? Those are intermediates between the wolf and the Dalmatian. So you
no,
have to
those are different breeds of dogs.
no. See these nodes, the arrows.
No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
not how phylogeny works.
This is how it works.
No, it's not.
Okay. Are you positing there is no intermediate between the Dalmatian and the gray wolf? The
No.
wolf ancestor.
The
There is no
branches
intermediate.
are not meant to represent any particular specimen.
No, there are many. Okay, are you saying these intermediates are merely abstractions or are they real?
They're abstractions representing real phenomena.
Wait.
So move the
Come
arrow
again?
up
Say that again.
one node, and that's
Oh, we can do that
a
again.
specimen.
Sure. Give me a second. I'll get that.
We should remember that these dogs at the bottom, these represent populations of animals. They're not individual dogs and individual wolves either. So you're asking for one transitional, but we're talking about populations of animals.
Are you questioning whether dogs are related to wolves? Like, you're starting there?
I mean,
Can I share my
creationists
screen?
accept, they say that
Okay.
they're the same kind.
Because that's not what's
no,
on
this is-
trial.
What
common
my
ancestry
partner
is
thinks
on
of his
trial.
free time is irrelevant to this debate. This is evolution on trial. So I'm asking you, are these nodes, the last common ancestor, are they real or are they abstractions?
Well, they're on a
The
graph.
nodes
The
are
gra-
abstract. The
Okay, so they don't
relationships are
exist.
real.
that
And you
doesn't,
need these
that's
to
not what
exist.
that's not what abstraction means.
Yes, it does. It means they aren't real.
No. No, the genie from Aladdin isn't real. An
graph of-
abstraction is
a
a
graph of-
representation. It's a simplification.
Okay.
Yeah, when
tell me
I
what these
when I
nodes
mark my
are.
height on the wall, that's an abstraction too, but it represents
Okay.
my height.
If they're not
which is real.
abstractions, tell me what they are.
Well, the data of evolution
Just data?
this would
Okay,
Are they
he's
real?
trying to waste our time.
they have Okay, so family trees or graphs like this, if they actually represented the amount of species there are, they would not be able to fit on a textbook page. So they have to shrink them and simplify them, and they have to make these abstractions in order to make it palatable for us to read, because we're humans and we can't actually see that much data. It would be too much data for us to actually comprehend in a useful way. So that's why abstractions are used. They're a simplification of the larger data field.
Right, and hang on, let me jump here for a second. So the simplification that's being talked about, in my opinion, is a way to just gloss over the rapidly growing amount of dissimilarities. Like, so the more genomes of different types of organisms that are being sequenced, the more we're discovering that there's a greater amount of differences and similarities in terms of unique genes. There was a paper on this, I think like 2 years ago, on the exact topic of like, oh, it turns out as we sequence more and more types of organisms, we're finding less and less similarities and greater dissimilarities. So the amount of mutation and natural selection and fixation of all sorts of de novo functions, that's just getting bigger and bigger. And
Completely irrelevant.
And since
relevant is
no. From your timeline, right? And you're the one that claims that there's improbabilities and things have to be taken into account. So if you're now having sequences that the probabilities of their formation through undirected process is greater than the number that you put forth in relation to ERVs, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So how do you explain the massive amount of dissimilarities in the coding regions, and as well as non-coding regions of the genomes, as we're finding out more and more of it is utterly essential for those organisms to exist?
It's irrelevant because it's mutations, and you know that. But
evolution can account for that.
What matters? Hold on, I'm speaking. What matters is what is the similarity between the most similar organisms? Can evolution account for the gaps between those? Well, yeah. And so the wider we widen our scope, there is nothing you can do
Well, tell me
that
what
will
is.
bring a barrier between any of the observed things that we see within modern animals. All of that we see within modern animals is explains the differences in between every organism in the fossil record as well.
So
Well, give
it
me
doesn't
one
matter if there's a difference between an elephant and a human. What matters is a difference between a human and an ape.
Well, give me one intermediate between this gray wolf-like ancestor and the Dalmatian. What is it? Where did the Dalmatian dog come from?
I haven't memorized dog phylogeny.
You can go look at it.
So-
I got the graph. You want to look at it? Yeah, I'll share it.
I don't care. Are you putting dog evolution on trial?
This is evolution on trial.
Okay. Well, the common understanding is evolution, common ancestry evolution.
Do you think
did
do you
you
think that
Dalmatians
dogs?
think
here
something
somewhere.
else?
Do you think dogs are related to
Are you
wolves?
just trying to avoid this? Are you trying to avoid this argument because you can't answer it?
We're trying to understand it.
No, I'm
Okay,
trying to stay. I'm trying to
the
not
question
let
is
you
simple.
waste my time because
There's an
this is a
ancestor
debate about
between
common
the Dalmatian.
ancestry of all organisms, not
is
about
evolution.
dogs.
It's about evolution.
No, it's not.
It's not. The debate is not about evolution.
The debate is about evolution from common ancestry.
That wasn't in the title.
So this is a
it's
bad
implied.
faith that you're arguing.
But even if
Okay.
it was, it would still be part of the evolution of ancestry. Okay, so the question is very simple. Dalmatian is here somewhere around the circle, outer edge of the circle, and you have the wolf ancestors here in the middle. So there are multiple intermediates, and all I need for evidence for evolution is for you to name one of these intermediates. What
They're
is?
fossil dogs, dude.
Can you present a fossil, or is a fossil abstract too?
A fossil that's an abstract too.
Do we
So
need the?
it's
Do we need
abstract.
the?
It's an abstract fossil, so which means it doesn't exist, and we're simply
No,
stipulating.
they're fossil dogs.
Okay.
Would we-
Has anybody presented this fossil intermediate?
Would you have to literally
Yeah.
have the fossil shown to you for it to count as evidence?
There are multiple intermediates. The coincidence that we can't find a single one,
That wasn't an answer. So
it is an answer. Why can't we find a single intermediate? Because this
it was a yes or no
this-
question.
How is that a yes or no? Okay.
Would you have to have the actual fossil of that intermediate dog shown to you physically in front of you for it to count as evidence?
At least one, yes. Because if you have zero fossils, and you don't, it could be a fossil, it could be or either could be also be a living animal. You have neither. You understand that?
How could it be transitional between an ancient wolf and Dalmatian if it's a Doberman? Like that's a different breed.
Okay.
Like that's what doesn't make sense about your chart. You're asking show me which of these breeds of dog is transitional between a modern Dalmatian and an ancient wolf. Like
Now the question
breed
is
breed.
No,
Okay,
the
so
question,
the
question is,
I'm not really sure what you guys
give me
are
one
arguing.
intermediate.
I don't know what you guys are arguing about at this point. In relation to, if we're going to go down the dog wolf rabbit hole, is it y'all's position that dogs are the result of preceding variations in wolf genomes, or the variations are all the result of mutation in the traditional paradigm sense?
I would say it's a mixture of natural selection and artificial selection, because we had natural selection of wolves to dogs. And then when we domesticated dogs, that's where the artificial selection comes in and gets you very specified breeds like a French bulldog with a flat nose, or a Chihuahua that's very small, or a Great Dane that's bred for its size.
Right, but you're dodging the point. The point of the question. The question was the necessary genomic information already present in the wolf in order to, whether it be through natural or artificial, in order for the breeds of dogs to descend from it, or is it necessitate the formation of a whole bunch of new information in order for these different breeds to take place?
It would be new, and you get that from mutations.
So you're suggesting that we couldn't very systematically recreate the breeds. It would have to be all random mutations that they're just selected for, or those that could be like reconstituted via purposeful manipulation of the genome.
No, like I said, it was a mixture of our natural selection and artificial selection, but both of those involve mutations. It's just that with one, you're intentionally trying to select for certain traits, Now, I'm not a geneticist, so I don't know.
So Shih Tzus, I believe, are either the first or second closest to a wolf genomically. You actually think that they're that similar, and like that defends your position?
Did I say or imply that?
Well, I'm saying that from you guys like to go down the rabbit hole of morphology, right? And that all these variations must be indicative of evolution in the traditional sense. But we now have something like, I mean, eventually you get a Chihuahua, right? And if you're looking at things from like the fossil record perspective and you weren't doing a direct genome comparison, are you actually going to try and argue that the skeleton could actually be truly timelined in between a wolf and a Chihuahua?
Well,
What does that
morphology.
mean? Timelined between a wolf and Chihuahua?
I think evolution is all about descendancy and heredity, right?
I think I know what he's asking. So morphology has to do more with just the shape and how an animal looks. That's why the first taxonomies, the first phylogenetic trees were made just based on how animals looks. It wasn't until we discovered genetics that they were able to go back and test the DNA of these animals and see specifically how closely related they were or not closely related. But no, I think if an alien came and saw a Chihuahua skeleton and a wolf skeleton, they probably wouldn't think that they're closely related or related at all.
Okay,
It's
cool.
because of genetic testing that we can know that, or the fact that we know we made Chihuahuas, basically.
Cool. So is 99% of all genetic comparisons done from extant genome sequencing or preceding comparisons?
You mean extant versus extinct? Because I think you have to be, DNA only lasts for a certain amount of time that you can still test it. Like there are fossils we can't
DNA can last for quite some time, but that's not the point. My point is the majority of evolutionary theory based on inference?
The
No,
majority?
It's based
No?
on prediction.
Okay, then tell me.
So the point about
intermediate.
morphological similarity is that since we know there's variation within animals that we see today that we know are related, that certainly is plausible for how animals that are similar change from each other.
Okay.
So it's
Are you
plausible.
missing the whole? Are you
And
missing
then,
the foundational point of the question?
And then when we have this hypothesis of, okay, so maybe this goes back further and further, then that's able to predict forms that you guys had no idea existed and exactly where they were and what they are.
Okay, that's
how science works.
This how you
That's
guys
what you can't
don't
do.
have. Okay, again,
But
ladies and
biologists
gentlemen,
can do.
ladies and gentlemen of the audience, this is example number 1 of the attempt to deflect over. Oh, to you guys didn't think of X, Y, and Z. That's not the point. That's not the question. That's not the thing that's being brought up here. This is in relation
your
to
terrible model of creation.
But let's not overtalk them.
Okay, so I'm not discussing anything from a creationist perspective. Okay, we're talking about the necessities of the genome and the differences and the very hyper-specific functional information that is necessary in order for different organisms to exist. Do you deny the fact that there is dramatic amounts of differentiation, the functional information, regulatory sequences, et cetera, that are necessary for different organisms to exist?
No, and that's the point, is there are observed mechanisms that change those differences can be the result of. We observe the ways that those changes arise.
Yeah,
And
differences don't
those
debunk
changes,
evolution.
Those changes can be predicted in the fossil record.
That's the thing. You don't have no fossils. If you did have fossils, you would be able to present at least one transitional between the Dalmatian and the wolf. And
Go
you
to a
can't
museum.
provide-
Go to
they
a
don't
museum.
have them.
fossil wolves.
They don't
Yes,
have
they
a
do.
single one at the museum.
Yes, they do.
Give me one then, Atheist Junior.
I told you. The transition is between you're saying ancient wolves and I guess domesticated dogs. Well, every
Dalmatian.
link along between the two is a transitional form between them. So the child of that wolf is a transition.
Are those transitionals real or are they abstract?
Those animals actually existed. Yeah.
Okay, can you present at least a single one?
I don't have to.
Is it that you don't have to, or is it that you can't?
I don't personally have the skeleton of that wolf fossil. No, so I can't.
Isn't
sorry.
it so convenient that we can't find a single transitional between the Dalmatian and the wolf-like ancestor?
Yeah.
Do you think wolves and dogs are related?
Absolutely not. But that would be
You
irrelevant. That would be
You
irrelevant
don't.
to this conversation because this is not about creationism.
Okay,
This is
look
about
up
evolution.
I
Look
didn't
up
say
the
anything
paper.
about creationism.
Look up the paper, Ancient Wolf Genome Reveals an Early Divergence of Domestic Dog Ancestors and Admixture into High Latitude Breeds.
Okay, tell me
It
what
has
the other
several
is.
specimens.
What is the intermediate? I simply want to know what it is.
They label them with like numbers and letters.
Numbers are just abstractions.
What?
It's a label.
Yeah, an abstract label.
Are you an
They
abstraction?
call it the Timir wolf.
Of course, I'm not an abstraction. But you are presenting
But you're not-
abstractions
but you're
as
not-
evidence
you're
for
not-
evolution.
You're not in front of me right now, though. I don't see you.
Atheist Junior, you're clearly dodging what is obvious. What's
Okay,
the
so now
obvious
I've given
problem you
you-
presented?
I've given you a citation. I gave you the name of it.
I just need you
Yeah.
to present at
The
least
reason-
one transition.
I did.
Alive or dead?
I did. And so the reason that I
You gave me
brought up,
numbers.
I gave you a name actually.
What name?
Timir Wolf, and I gave you the name of the paper that it appears
So
in where
Wolf
it's
gave
reported.
birth
So the reason that
Dalmatian.
I bring up creationism is because it is the most skeptical position that people hold on this earth about evolution. So I was hoping to start with some common ground of what is accepted variation of change, so that we don't have to start at biology 101 for an hour and a half debate.
But we can't even agree on if wolves and dogs are related, though.
Yeah,
the
that's
sake-
his tactic. He's trying to waste our time.
For the sake of the debate, a
dishonest.
logical
Okay, so-
LPP
so-
would be
so- so
adopted
first
in
off-
my position.
So first off, I don't think anything that I brought up is like necessarily biology 101. First off,
He Bubblegums was.
Yeah.
The macro view of all of this is when the more we dive into genetics, which originally, unless you guys are denying this, was considered the foundational defense of evolutionary theory. But the more research that's done, and the more that we discover that larger and larger portions of the genome have specific function, and that very minor mutations, even in STRs and things of that nature, like, oh, if it's as long as it's between 8 and 13 base pairs, we're good. If you have less than or greater than, then you have XYZ disease. Like, we're discovering this out the wazoo. And if the foundational premises of evolution, i.e., you can like have all these mutations that can take place until eventually something functional comes into existence, and you can have co-option, all these different things. If that's true, then why in what we're observing now is it look like if you don't have ridiculously high fidelity rates, you have massive issues, i.e. very often leading up to death. So how is it actually plausible, rather than just being inferred and extrapolated out from a mental gymnastics, that somehow all these things that we're observing, which would get in the way of evolution actually being plausible in the macro view, somehow just magically happened in the past? Like, how do you guys defend that?
So I asked this in my intro. What is the genetic limit? How many differences defines that something is not related?
Okay, that's not remotely what I brought up. I was
That
talking,
is exactly what you brought up. You said there are
no,
major differences in the genomes, which is somehow a point against the common ancestry of the organisms that we're talking about. So I asked a direct answer to that on topic, which is, how large of a difference does that need to be to challenge evolution?
For the sake of
hang on, hang on, ladies and gentlemen. He just said he asked a direct answer. Okay, so
Yeah, you can answer questions with questions.
I mean, people people misspeak
you
sometimes.
completely. Because he's dodging
This is on
my
topic.
question. You're dodging my question, which was
Well, it was about 5 minutes long.
Yeah, you talk
So
in a very
I-
complicated way that's hard to follow.
Well, I apologize that multiple structure components to a compound sentence are going over your head. Maybe you should take off your beanie. But the whole point that was being made was in relation to the fidelity necessity in order for things not to die. Okay, so if we know that you need to have 99.999% fidelity right now in order to not have massive issues, it doesn't matter if it's like in humans and chimps. I believe it's somewhere between 35 and 36 million base pair differences. I believe is the standardly accepted position, right? If we know that very minor modifications, exponentially smaller than 36 million or 35 million, whichever number you want to go with, cause you to die. How is it plausible in the 6 million year timeline or wherever the current supposed history is for that many changes to happen from a split or from a common ancestor and extinction not to have taken place? I mean, seriously, if you're talking about having that much difference.
So now you're asking about mutational load, mutational meltdown?
Ultimately, yes. But I mean, I'm serious. In context of fidelity, how is it plausible to make those jumps?
There are multiple papers studying mutational meltdown, Muller's ratchet, where it's quantified where there are ways where, bad mutations accrue, but there are multiple mechanisms observed that counteract the accumulation of deleterious mutations.
Yeah, and I feel like you're asking, like, how come there isn't just more extinction? But there was, over that time period, almost like 98% of species have gone extinct. Very few species are what Darwin called favored races that actually have been able to survive even up to the common day, or the present day.
Okay, for example, let's take an example. Could we take purebred Chihuahuas and evolve them to be as tall as a Great Dane or a German Shepherd without running into very disease-causing or just the utter death of the Chihuahua?
Why would I expect that we couldn't? We got Chihuahuas from wolves.
Okay, so
we have Great Danes,
so can you guys demonstrate by breeding, selective breeding yourselves, and provide through using purebred Chihuahuas only, and then select them to be as tall as a Great Dane or a German Shepherd? Has that ever been done?
You could breed it with a Great Dane or a Shepherd.
No, well, that's
you can breed animals to be larger.
Yeah,
okay, so you're saying
crossbreed.
Chihuahua and Chihuahua.
Yeah,
Okay,
Chihuahua and Chihuahua.
but you can breed organisms to be larger.
Has that ever
They
been
do
done?
that's why we have Great Danes.
It's been done with any.
Okay, where did the Great Dane come from?
It's been done with all livestock.
So you're saying the Great Dane came from like a Chihuahua-sized dog. What is the intermediate?
That's not what I said.
Sorry, it sounded like you said that.
No, Snake said that we can breed animals to be bigger. And I said that's why we have Great Danes, because we bred a dog, like the ancestors of the Great Dane. And
livestock, agriculture, everything we eat, we bred to be bigger.
I'm not really sure where this whole back and forth is going, but are you guys actually suggesting that you could get a Great Dane from Chihuahuas?
A Great Dane sized dog, not an exact Great Dane.
Well, okay.
Has that ever been done?
So you think that Chihuahuas could breed and ultimately could be selected to get as big as Great Danes?
Yeah, you can breed animals to get much larger than they started with.
Do it.
I'm not suggesting that there's a cap though. I mean, it's pretty well recognized that there's caps on how big things can get from a starting point, right?
Yeah, so you can't get a dog the size of Texas. Okay.
Okay, well, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm asking you directly. Do you think that if you're starting with the available genome in 2 Chihuahuas, do you actually think it's plausible to be able to get it up to the size of a Great Dane? Not the size of Texas, bro, because that's not actually a realistic concept. So let's get back to the real world. So do you think that getting it up to the size of a Great Dane is actually plausible?
Why wouldn't you be able to?
How come you can't do it?
The children could be a little bit bigger, and then the children of those children could be a little bit bigger.
Here,
I'll just keep going.
I'll tell you why it's not possible, Taylor. Because we tried this with the German Shepherd, and what happens? They ran into a wall in which it causes hip dysplasia on the German Shepherd. So it didn't even get that bigger. It just got a bigger hunch.
That's a German Shepherd. Some dogs.
It will happen with the Chihuahua the same too. You'll still get the hip dysplasia. So
you can't assume that just because one lineage has a certain mutational conformation.
Okay, mutations.
Another breed will have that.
Okay, mutations caused by man.
Bubblegum, so are you saying that there's always a possibility for how whatever would need to happen in order for your position to be true, it's possible?
I'm saying that we have observed that we can breed organisms to be larger.
We can. And are we doing any kind? I mean, these days, are we doing I know like the Chinese, for example, are doing massive amounts of gene editing in order to get like their giant pigs and giant cows, right? So doing like recoding of a genome from a artificial perspective, like intelligent agency being injected into the equation. Sure, there's all sorts of stuff that can be done. I mean,
Did I can say that?
I didn't say you said that. I'm saying
okay, I'm
that
not arguing that. So move on
Okay.
from that.
Well, you just made the argument that it's totally doable, and I'm clarifying to the audience.
I didn't mention gene editing.
I know you didn't. I'm telling the audience what would have to be acquired and what would have to be executed in order for the kind of thing that you're talking about to actually realistically be plausible if you're starting with something like two chihuahuas.
Nope. Have you seen that the livestock that used to be around, they were much smaller, and that was before the advent of genetics.
Especially cattle.
Yeah, they mixed them.
Pigs.
Yeah, they're mixing cattle to get different type of cattle. That's no duh.
That's
But
not evolution.
They
No,
have.
what I'm talking about is taking two purebred chihuahuas and getting them to the size of the Great Dane. That has
They've-
never been done.
They've bred pigs that have
There'd be
extra
no
ribs
reason.
and vertebra without gene editing.
So Taylor, how much are you willing to bet that two chihuahuas can actually get to the average size of a Great Dane?
I don't
Like,
know.
and how
There-
many generations would be required? Like how much money are you willing to bet on that?
I don't know.
Whether
Well,
or not
but
you
know
can
that-
do this or not
confident you in
does
evolution.
not mean if evolution is true or
Right.
not.
This goes back to my exact point I was making, and the clarification question I was asking you guys is whatever would have to happen. Well, it just happened because evolution is true. Therefore, this is what must have happened. There must have been some way for this to happen. Now, when it comes to actually
But that's not what I
defending
said.
the reasonability of, I didn't say you said it directly, but that's the end extrapolation of the point that you guys keep grasping onto. Is that, oh well, it could have happened because hey, haven't you seen cows breed? Therefore, they must be able to get that big. We're talking about something the size of a freaking, in comparison, something the size of a freaking rabbit becoming a steer. Like,
Have you seen the breeds of rabbits they've gotten? Huge rabbits, 3, 4, 5 times larger than wild ones.
3 or 4 times. Okay, so are you going to sit here and say that a Chihuahua is only 3 times smaller than a Great Dane?
I don't know the exact number. I know you can breed animals to be larger.
I didn't
Yeah, you
say
can mix
I didn't
animals to get
say
them
I didn't
larger,
say that I
But
didn't
we're
say
starting
you
with
can't.
pure breeds.
I didn't say that you can't. I specifically delineated that there's a cap on how big you can get things, and therefore you have to have a
you're
starting
saying-
point that's higher before you go lower.
You're saying you can't breed organisms to get larger.
That's not what I've said. I've clarified
Humans-
that multiple times. Taylor, are you not listening? I have
You
clarified
said
that
there's a
multiple
cap.
times.
It sounded
On how
like that's
big-
what you
on
just
how
said.
big, correct.
You said you have to start with something larger. That's what I thought I heard. But
Originally, yes.
so it sounds like you're saying that you can only go down in size.
Are you saying there was nothing ever that that ever was larger than the things that were able to be bred together and get bigger? And are you saying that they were the direct
No.
lineage of modern huge cows?
Organisms can get larger or smaller through lineages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through
You should be able
yes,
to make a
through a range. You're correct. And is it more likely they get smaller or larger?
It doesn't matter. It matters. The only thing that matters
It's
is the environment.
observationally true that they tend to get smaller.
Can two short people have
only-
a tall baby?
yeah, because you're mixing them. Start with
Nope.
a population of
Okay,
millions.
hang
No,
on. Let's-
average
let's-
human
hang-
height has gone up.
It
We
has
didn't
gone
start
up,
with giants.
it has gone up slightly, but they have where there
Slightly.
1,000 years ago, are there skeletons of people that were 7 feet tall?
Neanderthals, yeah.
There are no giants.
Also
that
humans
exist.
too.
There are, there's not giants.
There were people that were 7 feet tall 1,000 years ago.
but not 12 feet tall.
I didn't say 12 feet. Who
I
said
know. I'm
12
just
feet?
saying that.
So-
Okay,
Okay.
no,
We're
listen,
making a
listen,
joke.
Listen, guys, try to pay attention. Okay, you just made the argument that the people have been getting taller. Yeah, I agree. In the 1950s, the average male was 5'7". Now he's not. He's 5'9" and a third. Okay, that's the
Now-
current height change. In the Roman era, the average height was like 5'4" for a male. Okay, but was there in the Egyptian era? There's plenty of people that were way taller than that. There's bones all over the world of people that were way taller than 5'4" or 5'9". So
So are you saying that they only got taller because that original tall person's gene spread?
no.
Okay.
No, 'cause
so
you're-
are you
you're-
saying
no.
There's additional
Look,
epigen-
'cause you
I'm
guys-
trying to
hang
understand
on,
what
hold
you're
on.
saying.
Are there
You're conflicting
are
genetics.
the majority of the height increases and decreases epigenetic or purely genetic?
It's probably epigenetic.
Okay, cool. So if the majority of it is resulting from better nutrition and hygiene, things of that nature, that are enabling slight variations in height, but the pre-existing capacity for the much larger differences in height was already pre-existing. Is that evidence for evolution of something new, or just expression of pre-existing function?
Why would height increase be evidence of?
Can you answer the question directly?
New?
Can you answer the question directly for once?
I can't. It's hard to answer dumb questions.
That's not a dumb question. That's a hyper-specific question, Taylor. Is the capacity for via epigenetics and other minor variables for significant swings in height, did that necessitate the preceding ability for greater height, or is it 100% new function? Which one?
Is variation in height necessarily new function? I'm not sure what that means in this context.
Are you not claiming that height
inherited?
Are you not claiming that the height variables are evidence for evolution?
That is one piece of evidence.
Okay, cool. So does
increase
evolution
in size?
Right. So does evolution necessitate
change in size?
Additions to the genome? Yes or no?
What was that?
For new functions to be available, does that necessitate new functional information?
New mutations? Yeah. Yes.
Okay, cool. So this goes back to my point, pay close attention. If there was preceding functional information for greater height in the past, how then is these minor modifications in variables in height that we're talking about, the vast majority of which are the result of epigenetic factors, how is that evidence for evolution? You made the point that it was evidence for evolution. I'm saying that the function already pre-existed. Are you denying that?
The function of being able to change your child's height pre-existed, yeah.
Then it's not evidence for evolution.
The capacity for much greater height. You're saying you're having to breed for greater height in order to gain the ability to have greater height. We've just clarified that the ability to have greater height already pre-existed. Okay, so whether or not it's is the variable.
Of course it pre-existed. Every change in evolution is a modification of a pre-existing structure.
Okay, so is it your position then that these functions that we're talking about, using height as an example, was already in existence in a greater manner than it is now?
Did height exist in a greater manner than it is now?
Wait, Taylor,
the capacity for height, the capacity from an informational perspective.
Taylor,
mutation is new information.
Taylor, are you proposing that this wolf-like ancestor was preloaded with Dalmatian DNA?
One topic at a time, please.
No.
Because that sounds what you're saying.
No, I'm saying it had hair, and it had the ability to change the color of that hair and the length of that hair, etc.
That's what evolution is. It's changes.
Which we observe, which all creationist organizations accept.
No, but the thing is, this is specified information. It's not just random.
Every mutation is new information.
It's not just the expression of protein coding. It's the non-protein coding genes.
Mm-hmm.
How did they get there?
Lots of those prove evolution too, like the ERVs.
No, if you're going to propose, are you saying that
AJ, addition of a random bit of a bit of Shannon information has no relevance in relation to the necessity for functional information and the clearly delineated difference between the two. So whether or not you want to say that if there's a gene duplication or in that context that, okay, there's an increase in the number of bits that has nothing to do with whether or not it is new functional information, and then accounting for the necessities in order for this new functional information to come to be from the evolutionary model. That is the whole point that's being made here. So whether or not there's adaptation, very often in real time, I'm a big fan of Shapiro's work in talking about how they observed all sorts of things happening in real time. It was very directed. It was controlled modifications to existing function on the fly based on very specific pressures. But it was nothing random about it at all. It was a very exquisite function. So having those kinds of modifications and adaptations of pre-existing function, I have zero issue with that. But that's not y'all's position, is it?
Yes, it is. Every evolutionary change is a modification of pre-existing traits.
Okay.
But from undirected but from an undirected process, correct?
Nope.
Okay,
it's all directed by like the environment.
Okay, if the wolf didn't have the Dalmatian traits, it's a morphology. How did it get that morphology? Was it already preloaded in the wolf ancestor, or was it through microevolution that it gained these morphological?
It's definitely microevolution.
Okay,
The question I posed in my opening is, what is the limit to the amount of microevolutionary changes that can occur in a lineage? Is there a limit?
well, you tell me.
Microevolution is still evolution.
Okay, if
No,
this
as long as it's
this
not
is
going
microevolution,
extinct, there isn't a
if
limit.
this microevolution was real, you should be able to demonstrate at least one intermediate between the Dalmatian dog and the wolf.
Well, you
But you
just
can't-
admitted it is. All creationist organizations admit it is. I think
no.
we can handle that.
Yes.
What my partner believes in his free time is relevant to this debate. This is about you are defending evolution.
Mhm. And so another example of like functional information coming from pre-existing traits is the chlamydomonas algae.
Chlamydomonas. Yeah.
Chlamydomonas,
Yeah.
which started off unicellular and became multicellular. And it didn't evolve like some new protein complex or anything. It used pre-existing genes that were just regulated in a different way, which allowed it to basically have tissue differentiation in a body with set amount of cells.
Are you talking
Yeah.
about I think it was amoeba.
No, algae.
The
It's
algae.
an algae. It's
Okay.
a single cellular algae, and it got over 50 weeks. It was able to get an extracellular matrix because of selection pressures.
Well,
Okay,
first of all,
hang on. So I love when this supposed definitive proof gets brought up. It really honestly cracks me up. So
Me too.
in relation to the pan genome, was the ability to connect and communicate in different fashions between these single-celled organisms, did that already exist genetically?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
These algae were able to communicate with each other.
Okay, again, did the capacity for them to do exactly what was observed, did that already exist? Or
That's how evolution works.
what?
well, wait, hang on. Evolution. Okay. I'm talking about the functional capacity to do all the different variations they did. Did it already exist, or was this new information that was injected into the equation in order for for the colony model to form?
It's not a colony.
So what it
okay,
does is it already had the ability to stick to other cells and communicate with these cells.
Cool.
So what it did was just change like the temporal regulation of
Okay.
those genes that already existed, which ended up making them stick together in a body, and they would communicate with each other as a body and tell some cells to turn off and not reproduce, so that some cells would reproduce, which is essentially tissue differentiation and a body.
Yeah, and they did this to avoid a predator. And while doing so,
Mhm.
they became immobile, so they couldn't move. And
So,
it was only
what?
after the predator situation happened that they split again and became a single cell again. So it was never a multi cell or multi-cell evolution.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't, because it was already there. They already had that ability. It was just a defensive mechanism.
No, because it was a mutation.
Okay, so
It
are you
occurred due
guys
to a
are
mutation
you
that
guys
they
actually
tracked
gonna,
down.
They didn't
you-
split apart again. That's not true.
They did.
the
And
split-
by the
okay,
way,
so
I would pick being immobile over getting eaten by a predator.
If you don't move, you get no food.
right. Okay, so let's
Algae
think about.
don't. Algae
let's-
can just sit there.
Okay, so
They have
in-
photosynthesis.
immobile.
They have
Right,
photosynthesis.
in war, in the military, are there different specialties of a squad or a battalion or which insert
Yeah.
section? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So the are all of them, all the soldiers are still human,
Yeah.
but they could have a specialty in a different area, but they're still
Yeah.
remain
See,
human, right?
they can break off from the squad and still be alive, but the cells in the multicellular orgy cannot organism.
Yeah, they'll die.
They can, if they break off, they die. That's what makes it not a colony and what makes it a multicellular organism. That's the distinction.
Oh, that's what. Okay, so the
If we fought wars with blobs of men stuck together,
are you now going to try and argue that the genomes of all of these different single-celled organisms were now identical?
What did you ask? Are we arguing that they're not identical?
I'm asking you, you claim that they're becoming multicellular organisms, correct? Well, one of the key delineators of a multicellular organism, they're operating from the same genome with different cell type differentiation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are you guys arguing and claiming that these single-celled organisms all have the identical genomes now?
Probably not, because every cell in your body does not have an identical genome either.
Other than very, very slight modifications and variables, the genome is the same.
Well, if there's any slight differences, it's not identical then.
Okay. Okay, this is really cracking me up right now. Okay,
this is how you get cancer. All your cells have little tiny differences.
This is seriously cracking me up right now.
The difference causes cancer.
From all other multicellular organisms, do they start with the same genome and then develop out the variations from there? Yes or no?
What was the beginning of that?
Do all other multicellular organisms that we observe, do they start with the same genome and then cell type differentiation happens from there?
Yes.
Okay. So would that be a key delineator of what is a multicellular organism? It has a identical genome that can be modified, but that's the starting point.
Yeah, these are clonal from each other.
Whoa, they're clonal from each other? No, they're not.
Yeah, one of them splits off and starts cloning itself and makes itself a new body.
You're saying that the original, because they had a variety of different colonies or like groups, right? You're saying that they were all the same one, just replicated and then formed, or there was multiple to start with?
What? They were all the same one? How can all be one?
I'm asking you from a genetic perspective. Whether
the parent cell
were there multiple? Yes, were they all from the same parent, or were there multiple parents?
Each individual has the same parent cell that budded off from its parent.
That was a starting point for all the different groups?
Not all the different groups, the individuals that we're talking about. There were multiple different versions of this experiment. One, they were subjected to predators. One, they were subjected to a centrifuge.
I think they have it where it's like each colony is in a different like petri dish thing, and they start off with, I don't know if they start off with a single algae cell or not. They bud. I actually am not sure about that.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. Are you guys arguing? I'll have to look it up. Are you guys arguing that they all originated from a single cell and then ultimately formed into this multicellular hypothetical colony you're talking about?
No, only the 8-celled individuals started from the same cell.
So they had identical genomes and then differentiated into different portions.
Nearly identical, but clonal does not mean exactly identical.
Okay, so do they now have massively different genomes, or is there an expression of pre-existing function that enabled these variations to take place?
It's expressing pre-existing genes that are regulated in a different fashion.
Cool. So if it's already pre-existing information, how is that evolution?
Because it now is being regulated. It's now being regulated in a way where it has new functional information.
So it already had the capacity, and things got switched on and off. It already had the preceding capability to have these variables expressed. But you're claiming that is defense of evolution, not so there wasn't like slow mutations over time and new formation of function in order to create these new regulatory networks and things of that nature. They were already there, and within 50 days or whatever you said, in a very, very, even with bacteria, that's a very short timeline. You're saying that they created all these new functions?
It's 50 weeks.
It's like in code, if you have a command that's functional, and then you copy that command and you place it in other parts of your code, and it now has a completely different function, Yeah, that's new information.
Whoa. You think
What?
that, hang on, you think copy and paste creates a new function or just expresses an
Yeah.
existing function in a different spot?
Yeah,
holy
if you
shit.
know anything about
Oh my
code,
God.
Dude, are you
That's
sitting here?
how it works.
I do. Are you sitting here
Mhm.
trying to tell me I have a freaking, I have a contact form plugin in WordPress, right?
Mhm.
And I say, hey, I want to have this module on the contact page and on a interior page for a service offering. You're saying that because I say, yes, insert code here and here, that means it's a new function or the expression of a pre-existing function in a different spot? Which one?
Neither.
Neither?
Mm-hmm.
So you're okay. So please defend your position. What is it then?
So how it works in biology?
This is too good. Go ahead.
Taylor, this is very simple.
No, let me answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So the way it worked in the algae was
No. We're
John,
on
we
code
have to
right
give
now.
him a chance to
we're-
respond.
no,
John, I
We're
do want to
on
give him.
code right now.
John, we have to
Defend
give
this
him
in
a
relation to
chance
the
to
website.
respond.
dude. No,
You asked
Don't
him a
dodge.
question. We have to give him a chance to respond.
Yes, the way it works in
He
the
said I didn't
algae is that it turns on reproduction at certain points, and it tells the other ones to turn off at certain points. So in a code situation where you'd have, I don't know what command that says turn off a certain function or turn on a certain function, and it just it does that. But you take that line of code and you add it in a different way, that it does a completely different function, then yeah, that's new information.
you just said on and off was the new function, dude. Okay, that's like saying that's now like saying I've logged in and said I don't want it on this page anymore. I want to add it to 5 others. That somehow, again, this is not new functional information. This is
Yeah, it is.
no,
So
it is
this-
not.
this
It is
goes
not.
down
No, dude,
to
you don't
the
even.
very
Oh my!
binary
You copy paste
No.
something that's not new.
No.
Yes,
dude,
it is.
No,
If it
let's go
does
back-
something
no,
else,
Taylor,
it's
it's my
new.
turn to respond.
So
It's not
this
doing
is how
something
it
else.
works.
It's not a new
This is how it
function.
works
It's
with
not a
Give him
new
binary.
chance to
function.
respond, John.
I'm responding to him. He just went. I'm responding to him right now.
What was the
This
This
question
is
you
how it
asked?
works with
Thank you.
binary. You can make any different function based on different combinations of a 1 or a 0.
Taylor, if I steal the code from a Windows 10 and then just copy paste certain codes in a different spot, but it still does the same execution, am I going to get copyright struck and taken to jail for
Probably,
plagiarizing?
but that's not what I'm talking about. I
But
said it
that's
has a
exactly
different
what you're
function.
talking about.
I
Nope.
don't think what you're talking about.
Nope.
Okay,
Don't
Taylor,
lie. I
Taylor,
said it has a
Taylor,
different function.
Taylor, you want to go down to binary? Okay, so let's go zeros and ones. So does ASCII have a very specific code mapping that's been done for a sequence of zeros and ones that equals A, B, C, D, et cetera, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10? Yes or no?
I don't know.
So you're talking about binary and how these zeros and ones can make this new function, but you don't know if ASCII has specific code mapping of sequences that equal zeros and ones?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it
Is it-
does.
Is this
No, it
Taylor's
doesn't.
coding information on trial?
Well, okay. If we want to go down on that rabbit hole, are you suggesting that the genome is not code?
Irrelevant, just like everything you've just been saying for the
No,
last
it's
2 minutes.
100%. It's
What?
100% relevant. It's
No,
100%
it's not.
relevant.
I could
Wasn't
give you
even
that the
relevant to what I
genome is
said.
designed, and it changes nothing about this.
No, we're talking about the necessities of the sequence of the codons to be equal to specific functions. Are you denying that is necessary?
What?
That the codons must be in specific sequences in order to result in the specific function.
That's how it works.
Okay, so how is that any different than the combination of zeros and ones that are necessary to equal, whether it be letters and numbers, and then from a string perspective, equaling commands that are executed? Like, how is that any different?
So you're off on DNA as a code now?
No,
Is that where
no,
you're
who
trying
cares?
to?
I'm
No one
making
Because I'm not
cares.
going to waste my time.
I want to
on
make.
that.
I want to make sure.
Yeah, you
we're
can talk
operating
about
for
this on your channel. Like, we're not going to waste our time with this.
So are you going to argue that evolution does not necessitate the formation of new code from a genetic perspective?
You
No.
can make new code by altering previous code.
Okay,
As an
how do
intelligent
you
agent,
alter?
sure.
I've done this
Oh,
for
wait.
games.
Are you an intelligent agent who had an understanding of the desired outcome?
Yeah, that's irrelevant. The
But-
thing that I'm
so-
drawing attention to is that modifications of existing things can be used to create different functions.
Did your video game program
So
itself?
there was no new gene in this algae. It was regulated in a way that it makes an 8-celled body that some cells have reproductive function.
Okay, so
that's new information.
Did they all
you lose. There's no way around
Taylor,
this,
did
man.
they all have the preceding replication function? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so they turned off a pre-existing function, correct?
No.
Oh my fucking
Dude, are you serious? They had the pre-existing function. You just admitted that.
We're
And
going to
then
the Q&A shortly.
did they
maybe
turn it
about 5
on?
minutes.
Yes or no?
Thank
Turn it
God.
on or off? Which one? This is
They
not that
turned it on
complicated.
and off at different times
Okay, cool. So was that
and with different stimuli.
So turning off. So if I click off,
Okay,
does that mean that the pre-existing function already existed or came into be when I pressed on and off? This is like saying I turned the light on. Oh man, this is too
okay.
good.
So here's a good coding example. If I have the command execute function, but I change the cause of the executable, then that's different information.
If you yes, but what has to happen?
Okay, we're done with that. Now
okay,
let's move on to
right. No.
Now we're done.
How does that have to? What has to happen in order for that change to take place?
It moves, which can happen in genes.
turns on.
No, dude, in relation to the code base, what has to change in order for the cause for the if then else to be modified? What is necessary from a machine code perspective for that change to take place?
Someone types it in. Is that what you're looking for?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, and what is necessary for that to take place?
You press the keys on a keyboard. Are you looking for an intelligent agent did it?
Intelligent
code can
agent
do this
equals
on its
God.
own.
Equals
No.
Because DNA can do this on its own,
No,
which we've demonstrated with the algae.
Dude, you're using the we've already established that the genomes or the algae weren't creating new function. They were turning on and off pre-existing
we've
function.
established that it does have new function. You just said it was new function.
Dude,
you
Like
said
an
yes to me.
extracellular matrix.
Oh my god. Okay.
You said yes to me.
No.
It's a
So we've
beneficial
been on
mutation.
this.
This is
You wanted to talk about
ladies and gentlemen, this is
ERVs, didn't you?
ladies and gentlemen, this is hilarious. These guys are doing such a hilarious dance and dodge.
Okay,
And
we
know
only
that
have
they
a
opened-
couple minutes left. So
James, did you say
can
we're going to Q&A?
Yeah.
Is that where we're at? This is hilarious.
Notice that we haven't been-
ERVs?
Let's
We
haven't been laughing at our
We haven't heard
opponents.
from Atheist Jr. in a while.
I just wanted to say, notice that me and Taylor haven't been laughing in a mocking way at our opponents the whole debate. I just wanted to point that out. But evolution can have mechanisms that are both natural selection and artificial selection that has an intelligent agent in it. That doesn't disprove it either way. It's an intelligent agent. You can't equivocate that to that means that God exists. Because I know that's what you're trying to do, and if you won't admit it, but that doesn't work either.
No, this has nothing to do with
We're not the
God.
ones
This has nothing to do with
snapping.
God. This has everything to do with the fact
Okay.
that Taylor and you have both been like, well, all you have to do to change this clause in the function is type some stuff in. Like, and
It happened.
now, does it have to be in a hyper
The
specific
experiment happened.
Does it
Get
have-
over it.
Dude, was new coded information injected into the genome? We already established this.
It wasn't injected. It was mutated.
Okay, the turning on and off of a pre-existing function is not mutation to new information. It's the deactivation of existing information.
We've been over
Hey,
this.
Taylor, if I
You
turn on
admitted
my
it.
light
So
bulb,
can we talk about ERVs
is my
in the
light
last
bulb
couple
not there?
minutes? Because you said I wanted to avoid that.
Let's go with what have you got? Let's go Taylor. What have you got?
Yeah. So basically, you kind of dodged the whole it being implausible numbers wise, and then you kind of went off into, well, it confers a function, therefore it was designed or might be designed, which it's not because they are confirmed to be parts of viral elements. We can observe this happening today, so we know that they are in fact viral elements. Koalas are undergoing this right now, so we know what it looks like when ARVs invade the system now. And they actually confirmed that you can confer function in mice with ERV elements.
Can I answer to the koala real quick? Okay, the koala has two ERVs, ERV-B and ERV-A. ERV-A was already there in the koala, and it's necessary to the koala. ERV-B is a mutation of KRB-A and has become the disease one. So all you're providing is evidence for creation because KRB-A was already in the koala. It was only after it mutated into KRB-B that it became a disease.
No, because a god wouldn't make it look like it was all. there would be no way
Okay,
for
look,
it to all infect
KRBA was
different
necessary
lineages
to
in
the
the
problem.
exact same spot. And a God who wanted us to know that wouldn't do that.
Disease happened. That doesn't disprove God. Plus, that's not part of this debate.
Yeah, viruses cause disease, but they took
No,
the
the mutation
ERV.
Hold on, let's hear from Snake.
Hang on. Taylor, are you arguing that that the vast majority of viruses are pathogenic?
The vast majority of viruses are pathogenic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's categorically false. It's the
Viruses are pathogenic.
It's the reciprocal. It's a very small number of viruses are pathogenic. The vast majority are either benign or have some kind of function.
ERVs or not?
Well, we're talking about viruses.
Who cares?
Okay, I'm talking about
Who cares?
ERVs.
Okay, so
The human
so the
ERV
ERVs that have documented function, which I kind of addressed in my opening,
So-
they're like essential for like development. Okay, so
Wait, so
those are
we've proven that organisms can co-opt ERV elements for functions that they already have.
It has never been
you-
observed.
Yes, it
It has
has.
never been
Yes, it has.
observed.
the,
No, it
the,
hasn't.
whoa, the co-option has been observed. The
the
co-option has
ERV
been observed.
THE1B was inserted into mice and it started being expressed where normally it helps cell-to-cell adhesion in apes' placentas, but it's expressed in the brain in mice and other mammals. So they inserted this ERV into mice and it started using that ERV information to be expressed in its brain. And it started regulating for the brain. And that's how things, that's how you co-opt viral functions.
So did you just say that it already has a very, very similar one that's executing, that's being like prior to this insertion? It has one very similar? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, cool. So in code, right? If I take a chunk of code for, let's go back to using something simple for the audience of a form, right? And I get the script for it from GitHub, and I freaking copy and paste it into the source code for a freaking web app or a website, right? It came from this other one, but is the browser going to be able to read it if it operates on the same system and it's the same code?
I'm guessing no, but that's
Oh my
not what
God.
happened.
No, the answer is yes.
No idea what this
The
has to do with
answer is
anything.
yes. Okay? The answer is 100% yes. So
So
the
that's
fact
what
that
happened in
Chrome,
biology.
the fact that Chrome can read the code that was taken from over here and injected into this other website, but they're both operating on HTML, CSS, PHP, whatever languages that Chrome can interpret. Are like, what is the relevance to the mouse having a very similar piece of code inserted into its genome and then doing the same type of function?
You brought it up.
It doesn't. It has a.
I didn't bring it up. Snake brought it up, not me.
No, he
The
brought up the
point is
mouse
that
because we're talking about
a
biological
mouse-
evolution.
I didn't bring
Yeah.
up the mouse. I did
The
not bring up
point
the
is
mouse at
that-
all, AJ. That was Taylor who brought up the mouse.
I
He's
said
lost an
that.
example.
Well,
Yeah,
give
that's what I
Taylor a
said.
chance to respond, then we got to go to the Q&A.
The mouse has this regulatory hormone, corticotropin releasing hormone, which helps in cell division and adhesion. It has a completely different system that does this for its brain and its hypothalamus, as do mammals. Humans use this in their placenta. They use the ERV in their placenta. They were able to make the mouse use the ERV in their brains
They were able.
and
So there was.
hypothalamus.
So there was
So
code.
this is proving that
So
Gotta
code,
jump-
hang on. So
we've
code
gotta
had
jump
to.
in.
co-opt
We got to jump into these
ERV
questions. We got a
functions.
So
lot of questions.
human directed code.
We got a
code
lot of
editing.
questions. We're going to jump into the
hilarious.
Q&A. Want to say thank you very much for your questions, folks. We're going to try to move fast. All of our guests are linked in the description. You've already been exposed to them. In the most part, you can... You guys are perverts. But you can click on their links in the description box if you would like to be exposed more to them. This one from Stupid Horror Energy says, viral mimicry and tumor suppression aren't really functions of ERVs. Viral mimicry occurs due to ERV, endogenous retrovirus activation. They don't function as tumor suppressors. Their activation can activate oncogenes. Oncogenes.
Yep.
I feel like it's
They work in. There's in every instance. That's not what's being argued. that's a specific function of specific types. And usually they're working in conjunction with other proteins and other genes, i.e. like P53, in order for the activation of the immune system to destroy cancer cells and things of that nature. So I'm not applying a blanket function to every single freaking ERV. I was using examples of different ones that do have these functions. This is like saying every gene does the exact same, creates the exact same protein or enzyme. Like, that's just ridiculous.
You got it in this one coming from, thank you very much, Alan Dupree says, your mic is tilted the wrong way. Thank you for that, Alan. I appreciate it. It oftentimes is, but I appreciate the feedback. Mark Reed says, logical, plausible, probable. Co-opted functionality for ERVs does not solve the problem of how they got into the same place in both chimp and human DNA. How do you explain that?
Okay, Mark, as usual, you never pay attention. By the way, folks, there will be an after show on my channel if people want to come. We can have greater conversations about this. If you're operating from a pre-existing or a code base that's being used in unison for a variety of things, having code in the exact same spot, somehow not being evidence in favor of that versus happening randomly through undirected process is ridiculous. That's like saying that because every freaking website, if you right click and view source, is going to have header, title, footer in almost the exact same spot on every freaking website, every web page is going to have that. Somehow that is not evidence in favor of it being put there on purpose versus randomly. I don't understand why this is so difficult to understand, especially for you, Mark, given the fact that you claim to be a expert in networking and such.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question, Alan Dupree says, BGG and John, what is your plan to influence the scientific consensus?
Me? Just make these evolutionists look silly. Which they already do. I really don't have to do anything.
What was the question? What am I going to do to influence the scientific consensus?
Correct.
Well, I think that there's already fractions happening, things taking place inside of academia already. I think that the ongoing argument to the masses will ultimately be necessary because they're going to operate from their dogmatic positions. Well, the evidence is going against them, and eventually they'll have to realize the emperor wears no clothes.
This one coming in from.
I was just going to say the answer is none.
Swifter says, ERVs cannot be explained away by function. What you need to do is explain shared loci, mutations, and long terminal repeats, discontinuity, nested hierarchies. Failure to do so makes uncommon ancestry a fantasy. Can you do that?
I think we already answered that one. If I could add why it's so important, I want to give you guys the chance to respond first, but okay. Yeah, it's because of how they're inserted. They're inserted as infections, and function does not really depend on necessarily their location. It's based on a false precept.
This one coming in from Stupid Whore Energy says, Maddox OR fans genes encoding proteins of unknown function are mostly found in viral and plasmid genomes. Makes sense since they mutate madly. Some encode new families of DNA polymerases and topos.
Well, a lot of that is assumption, but the point I was making in relation to all of the orphan genes and the differentiation and more sequencing we're doing, the whole point I was making is there's dramatic differences, and you're claiming that all they all just magically happen to form themselves. But wait, isn't it the similarity that's supposed to be the evidence in favor of evolution? But now we're finding all these massive amounts of differentiation. So which one? You can't have it both ways.
This one coming in from Bitter Truth says, John/skeptic, why are all living organisms genetically close to each other? Don't you think they have a common ancestor?
Okay, so again, the more we study the genomes, the more we're realizing there's dramatic differences that we didn't realize were different because we were ignoring entire portions of the genome in the first place. But in relation to the What was the second part of the question?
One sec. Is there someone with like a background speaking or like a TV on or something? Because it's just a little bit. I can hear
There's some
something.
crazy echo.
This one
going
from
on.
Bitter Truth says, John, why are all living organisms so genetically close to each other? Don't you think they have a common ancestor?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so from a dev standpoint, if you're building multiple apps on like web apps on like Cake PHP, right? And let's say you're using Bootstrap for your CSS, there's going to be dramatic amounts of similarities, but you can have like things that are just massively different from an end functional perspective. However, if you do a code audit and look at all the similarities, you're like, oh my God, look at all the similarities in this code. But then in any other context, somebody's like, oh, well, that just means that this one evolved from the other one. You'd be considered a moron. So in relation to why would there be similarities? Well, if it's all organized, architected, and has architecture from a logic and a functional information perspective, I mean, that would be more indicative that it was created by an intelligent agent, not formed for undirected process. But that's just me.
How big a difference is relevant is my question.
Yeah, you're not arguing for God at all.
The person asked me a question directly, and I have avoided that whole point the entire debate. So don't sit here and try and now, because I'm answering a question from the audience, that now act like this is just an argument for God. That's not what's going on. Go ahead.
Fair enough.
This one coming in from John Mathers says, why are all of the deities in every religion invisible? Every single religion.
Not part of the debate, but it's because they are. Well, for example, we wouldn't say God exists because then we would say he's an object and we would just anthropomorphize God. So God isn't a thing. So he doesn't exist, but he is true, you could say.
There are pantheistic religions that believe that all of nature is representative of God, so that wouldn't be invisible in that example.
I mean, from a general revelation perspective, I would argue that kind of sort of in line with what AJ has said, but not quite the same, that the things we're observing in the universe would be evidence in favor of God in relation to, I mean, there's so many other things. This is argued, been argued for millennia in relation to what are the evidences for or against God. Showing a physical presence like on an ongoing basis, I mean, I guess you could do that. And from the Christian perspective, that will happen in the future, but there's a preceding timeline leading up to that.
You got it. This one coming in from Mr. Monster. Says, how do you guys dispute radioactive dating, which is empirically checked over and over to be fact?
Hasn't been remotely discussed tonight and has zero to do with the debate.
This one coming in from Big Bad Mama says, Maddox, why is Standing for Truth's ERV manual, which you accept, not taught in the science curriculum in any university?
So I'm pretty sure that what she's referring to was just published like a month ago. So how it would already have made it into academic curriculum, given the fact that those things are like take years to be modified in the traditional sense, I'm not really sure how that question is relevant. In regards to my knowledge of it, I actually haven't, I've read a couple chapters of it, but I have not read the entire thing. I actually haven't watched his, I've been super busy with work. I haven't watched any of his lectures on the topic, so I don't really know what the point of the question is.
Yeah, give it some time. It'll make it there.
Definitely well formatted.
This one from Pineapple Platypotamus says, for both sides, why do women shave their legs?
To appeal to expectations of gender roles based on Western society.
To appear monotonous, I would think.
Because of hygiene.
John. This one coming in
Should
from...
men do that?
John. All right, this one. Appreciate your question as well. Bitter Truth says, skeptic of evolution. May I know both of your guys' educational background, if you don't mind?
For them or us? Or everyone?
I think they were saying...
Well, they said
the
skeptics of evolution.
Oh.
I mean, I'm a layman personally. I mean, so I don't really think that's important in these debates, but that's just me.
Well, hang on. You don't think it's important? Didn't you guys specifically talk about in your opening statements how if you don't have the education in these topics, that you can't really have a challenge to the conventional paradigm?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't say that.
I did, because if you're challenging a widely held consensus from the experts, then you're going to probably need some expertise, because otherwise you're at a very high danger at Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right. So is it your position that there's no people that do have the supposedly requisite degrees who are also making very similar arguments? Do they not exist?
No, there's people at
Are they
Answers in
undergoing
Genesis.
Dunning-Kruger? Are they all those? Are they the only ones?
Yeah, and they're better qualified to challenge the consensus.
Okay, so if let's just hypothetically, if they make the exact same argument as I do, does that negate the validity and soundness of the argument based on who delivers it?
No.
It would be just as bad.
So what the hell? No. We're talking about from a logical perspective. Does the qualifications of the individual making an argument have any relevance to whether or not the argument is sound and valid?
No, but it does have relevance for for us being able to have a conversation about it, us knowing that each other knows what they're talking about. That's why these people are hired, because they're better qualified.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not it's sound or valid, correct?
This one coming in from, want to say, folks, so sorry. YouTube is glitching. Someone sent in a really generous super chat, a $50 super chat at the start. And I'm sorry, I can't. I tried to put all of them in a little Post-it note as I was going. And that one, I think, unless I already read it, just whoever did put that super chat in, if you could at me just in the live chat with just a normal at Modern Day Debate and let me know what that question is so I can for sure read it in case I didn't. Because as I've been going through, I've been deleting questions. I just want to be sure that I didn't miss that one. Bitter Truth says... Huh?
Oh, I was going to say, there's a way in your YouTube settings that you can look at all the super chats that you've gotten previously. I was just going to say that.
Oh, yeah, that's where I'm looking, but it's glitching. So for some reason,
I see.
I don't know why. It started doing this last night, but it's still doing it to where I've tried to copy and paste them into a doc really fast, but I just want to be sure that I didn't miss that one because I was like, did I for sure get that one? But anyway, this one coming in from Bitter Truth says, Skeptics of Evolution, can you answer what is the folding code for denatured proteins? And can we predict the native structure of a protein from its amino acid sequence precisely? Just checking. Thank you.
So yes and no. Our knowledge is growing dramatically. The AI systems that have been being developed have become better and better at being able to predict the end fold of a sequence. Still not 100%, but it's getting dramatically better as time goes by.
Those AIs are based on evolutionary principles. But just a little tidbit.
No, it's based on knowledge of what sequences result in which three-dimensional fold. That's pre-programmed information, and it's based on analysis.
John Mathers says, thank you very much for your generous super chat. John Mathers says, buy or download a copy of John Day's, quote, Yahweh and the Gods and Goddesses of Canaan, unquote, if you aren't scared of it burning your hands if you are religious. Zealots fear archaeology and linguistics. Abrahamic monotheism evolved from Canaanite polytheism. How do you like them apples, Theus?
Well, personally, me, I like it. Maybe my partner not so much, but that's irrelevant to this conversation.
That's right. You're a polytheist, aren't you?
I hope when we have creationism on trial that it will come up, because I'm sure that debate will happen.
John, no thoughts on this one?
I thought it was directed at the atheists. I'm not really sure what the point is.
No, I think they're saying that monotheism evolved from earlier Canaanite polytheism, in particular Abrahamic monotheism has.
Yeah, well, it's ironic that people talk about that. It's not going far enough down the rabbit hole. If you keep going down the rabbit hole, you'll find that stuff derived from, and it's almost on a global level, a monotheistic perspective that morphed into polytheistic, and then in some cases came back into monotheistic. So it's just, anyway, keep going down the rabbit hole, buddy.
This one
If your
coming
fingers,
in from
if your fingers haven't burned, you can turn the tape. Keep turning the pages. Keep going a little bit further.
Bitter Truth says,
What?
in order to refute evolution, you guys must know biology. Question for you: what is the cause of homosexuality, especially in the human species?
What
I think we'll get canceled if we answer that question.
Well, there is a genetic component to it. Maybe it's not one specific gene, but they did do studies that showed that identical twins had a higher percentage if one is gay of the other being gay. But I would say that your sexual orientation has it's more of a nurtured versus nature relationship, where the way that you grow up and the things you grow up around and your things that influence you also are going to have an effect on that. I think obviously.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that question. In order to debunk evolution, you need to understand biology. What is the cause of homosexuality? I don't know. Go ahead.
I think they're
It's
saying
just
that
the shared amount of knowledge that two experts need to engage in to have a more expedient conversation, at least.
this one
Could
coming
have
in.
left the second half off of that question. Sorry.
Stupid horror energy strikes again. Question for creationists: A to I RNA editing can mechanistically increase the A to G mutation rate in the corresponding positions. Isn't this a rich source, one of many, of evolutionary novelty?
Can you? I was trying to keep track of your letters and words there. The likelihood of different swaps, I don't think that actually leans in that favor, especially when you factor in the endonucleases and the editase and all the different error correction mechanisms, which account for the vast majority of those types of modifications. And given the fact also there's ones that are specifically in place to address those kinds of modifications, I would say that wouldn't actually go in favor of it from a macro view.
Gotcha. This one coming in from Joe Schwartz says, dumb question. Will we ever see another animal evolve to have intelligence of a human? I think this is a genuine question.
Raccoons, maybe one day. They have the hands with the opposable thumbs like humans do. If they had the brains of dolphins, who knows what they could do?
Maybe the French will evolve one day, but I'm not sure.
That is offensive.
I like to dig on the French for some reason. I couldn't think of anyone else.
Right now, I think
not
right
in our
now,
lifetimes, probably.
Right now, I would argue that to extrapolate on Taylor's point, none of the European countries have a chance. They're toast now that their gas got shut off yesterday.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question, John Mathers. Says there are examples of transitional fossils and vestigial organs that they teach in basic biology classes, from whales to Archaeopteryx.
I think that might be aimed at me.
I think so.
Okay, yeah, you can't DNA test any of those. For example, evolutionists will say with 100% accuracy that this, I think, I forget what's the name of the fish ancestor, but they'll say with 100% accuracy that's our ancestor, despite not having any genetic data. But they can't give a single degree of separation between a wolf and a Dalmatian. That's all.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Stupid or energy, says Maddox in BGG. Look like they are leaning on each other. This one from Bitter Truth. Thanks very much. And again, was it Swifter? Was it you that asked that super chat question that I mentioned earlier? The $50 one that like came in really early? Was that you, Swifter? But Bitter Truth says, dramatic similarity, or there's common ancestry due to the shared DNA. Why do you ignore it by saying that God made it? We don't even have Adam and Eve fossils, and there is no single evidence for this. So why this interpretation, John, namely the idea that it's evidence of a common creator or designer?
Good Lord. I've addressed this multiple times. Go back, rewind to the portion where I was talking about something like cake PHP and Bootstrap, and analyze that whole point do some Googling to understand the macro view of the point that was being made, and then come back.
You got it. And this one coming in from Made by Jim Bob says, Snake/Atheist Jr., if beliefs are expressions of evolution, if theism is a belief that is evolutionarily advantageous, should we all be theists then?
I would say no, because the point of evolution is usually to live long enough to reproduce, and being religious has resulted in a whole lot of violence.
I would say yes. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Si.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the environment. So there are, I don't think it's the theism itself. I think it's more that theism serves as a community bonding mechanism. And yeah, that can be advantageous. There are a lot of delusional type thoughts that can be advantageous for survival, because it's safer to believe that the wind is a tiger than the tiger is the wind, sort of thing. But I think that in more modern times, it's not advantageous.
You got
it. It depends on the environment.
Say yes, because it doesn't really matter the under what flag you fall or religion. It's mostly the zealotry when an ideology becomes toxic. Even atheism can become a communist nightmare. So, but you need a structure. You need some amount of order. You just can't have a pure disorder. That's all.
You got it. This one from, do appreciate your question, Alyosha says, the monotheism argument is historically illiterate, too much of difference in the systems. That was from one earlier. The native atheist says, don't know who the other guy is, but Maddox needs to look up, quote, God of the Gaps fallacy, unquote.
You're mute.
Are you muted?
Sorry, I had to step away for a second there to explain to police what I was doing here. Okay, so God of the Gaps fallacy is based on just what you don't know versus what you do know. Okay, I get so tired of the standard, it's God of the Gaps versus naturalism of the gaps, all these kind of things. Like, okay, there's number one, in regards to this, the trial portion of this debate, I was not going down the rabbit hole of ID or creationism. So atheists, try to pay attention to the debate. And then in regards to you're going down the God of the Gaps fallacy route, the point being made is the contradictions to the naturalistic explanation, not just saying, God must have done it, which is not even really the position that was being taken.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question, Beamsy says, do LPP and BGG realize that Chihuahuas are extinct and the modern ones are just dogs that are bred to look the same but are not actually Chihuahuas?
Yeah, we can mix dogs. Surprise.
Mark Reed says, BGG. Are you aware there are 4 breeds of dog that have evolved in modern times? Buer Terrier, the Barbet, the Belgian Lacanois, I screwed that one up, and the Dogo Argentino.
Yeah, those are all mixed dogs. You get new dogs by mixing dogs. Surprise.
You got it. And Cameron Hall says, did you get my question? Cameron, I'm virtually certain we read yours. Let me just double check. I'm going to go back and try to edit undo and just be sure that we covered all of the questions. As I mentioned, folks, there was a generous $50 super chat that came in earlier, like at the very start of the debate, and I'm like I want to be sure that I read it because I thought that I copy and pasted it because YouTube's glitching, so I don't have the list in my Creator Studio. But forgive me if I don't have that. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Bitter truth strikes again. Where do our memories get stored and how are they retrieved again? How can learning be improved? What is the difference between explicit and implicit memories? What molecule is responsible for synaptic tagging, John?
Well, one of the latest theories, which I actually interviewed the PhD researcher behind it, Ben Galt from the UK. The position he's taking is the mesh code theory, and specifically looking at the talon protein and a couple other ones it interacts with, operating as 13-bit binary switches that are dynamically storing information, and looks like the code base, or the code that it's utilizing to store the information, would potentially expand the data storage capacity exponentially. They have quantified it and delineated the whole code, and are now working to interpret this. But it sends signals into the nucleus for expression of specific genes. It's quite fascinating stuff. But I would say that the mesh code theory and the different components that are working under that auspice would be a starting point for the answer to your question.
Memories are stored in the hippocampus.
This one coming in from, let me be sure that I've got every last question. If it was you who put in that super chat and it did not get read, shoot me an email at Modern Day Debate and we'll make it right. I'm at moderndebate@gmail.com, and want to say I'm searching for any last questions. Oh yeah, Cameron, you asked if I got yours. Let me just double check just to be absolutely sure that I did get yours, because I thought I remembered copying and pasting it. And yeah, I did reach out to YouTube support today to let them know that I've had this problem, and they apparently haven't fixed it. But
we can talk about dogs while we wait.
I did it on the it was in the creator studio. There's like a live chat that I opened up.
If you tweet at YouTube creators, they usually respond on Twitter. I've noticed that.
They did respond. They recommended me for that link that I went to, but unfortunately they're just surprisingly haven't done a great job of actually fixing it. So let me know if that question was from you, though. Nobody claimed it, which is, I'm surprised. Like, could they have?
They're not watching.
Yeah, quick! Someone claimed the $50.
Could they have really put in a $50? If I put in a $50 super chat, I would be I would be like glued to the screen. But it might have been Jeff Bezos. But want to say our guests are linked in the description. Want to encourage you, if you have not already, you can check out their links right now, and you can learn more about their views. Oh, Cameron, I did not. Cameron Hall, I did not get your question. If you can at me with it really quick in the live chat, I'll read it. I want to mention, folks, in the meantime, if you are listening via the podcast, our guests are linked in the description as well. So if you were listening there and you're like, oh, okay, who is this person? I'll check out their YouTube channel. This is the first time I heard about Snake or BGG or Maddox or Atheist Jr. You certainly can by clicking on those links right now, whether you be listening via the podcast or via here on YouTube.
Not me. Stay away from my channel. I don't want atheist versus creationist debate on my channel.
It's up to me
sassy.
instead.
Did we just lose John? Oh my
Yeah,
god!
we did.
Did John get
He looked
arrested?
pretty spooked.
Well, let
Probably,
me switch over here.
Snake scared him off.
Because I think there were
Should've
police
streamed
that
it.
came out and they were like, what are you doing out here in front of the building? And John was like, hey man, want some drugs? Let me check. Hold on, there's another question. This one came
I
in
think
from
the spirits got him.
Alyosha says, bigger question is how visual data is rasterized, sound synced, then digitized, stored, then recalled in our consciousness.
Well, I guess our brains are able to process all that data because our visual cortex has to flip an upside down image that gets from our eyes, and we get data from both our left and right ears. It's slightly different, and the human brain is just an amazing thing, isn't it?
No, there is no hard drive that stores what your actions are in the brain. What life is the combination of spirit and body. So your choices are coming from the spirit through the body. It's no different than the radio and the signal. The broadcast is the consciousness. The signal going through the radio is the spirit.
You got it. And this one from Cameron Hall says, can the skeptics provide an alternative working model to explain biological diversity of life? I think that was for John and BGG. They're saying if you're not willing to accept evolution, do you have something that would be better than it?
Well, I would say creation. I don't know about LPP, but it's not the topic of this debate.
You got it. And Angry Canuck says, hey, can you ask BGG my questions together? You didn't get mine. I sent 2 chats. Angry Canuck, was it, let's see, said, did you have a question? Sorry about that. If you did actually put in that $50 super chat, especially, we've been looking for that one, let me know. Even if it's not the $50 super chat, if I missed it, as YouTube has been glitching tonight, please do shoot it in right now and I'll ask it. Pardon that kind of, I'm curious, is anybody else having that issue with, or any of you guys have got YouTube channels, at least 2 of you do. If you have super chats turned on, do you have it where you're having the issue of where it doesn't show them when you click on the see all button?
Well, have you tried going backwards in the timeline of the video? Because on mine, like, super chats will pop up, but they eventually disappear after a certain amount of time, based on how much money they are. Correct. Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to, when I look at it, I can't go back any farther than about 8:59.
Yeah.
And I wish I could go back further. I'm trying to think, does anybody else know of a way to like see an old question?
Well, you said that you tried going like to your YouTube dashboard and then like click on like settings, and in there like there's one of the tabs shows me like every super chat I've gotten recently. But I guess that one didn't work.
I mentioned already
if
that
if anybody has LPP's number, you should probably call them, check if he's okay, not arrested.
That's true. Let me call John just to see that he's not arrested. Let me see if I can turn off super chats and then turn them back on, and let me see if that actually does the trick. So
donate for his bail fund.
Angry Canuck said, one of my questions that I sent in was, why can wolves breed with dogs?
They can breed, but their offspring are infertile. But that's no different than saying, why are the lugs on the car compatible with why are the lugs of 2 sedans compatible? Well, yeah, there's gonna be some compatibility, but you're not gonna be able to put the entire engine. There's some compatibility, but the compatibility leads to infertility. So they're not really. Yes, it does.
Not in that specific example, it doesn't.
Well, it degrades infertility. It's more prominent, for example, on a lion and a tiger.
Wolf dogs are fertile.
They degrade fertility. For example,
a mule is usually infertile.
This one?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the degrades infertility. What you can get mutts, general fitness goes down.
You can't demonstrate that. So.
Yes.
This one from also the Angry Canuck, thanks very much, said, if you look at Google, the Dalmatian comes from bloodhounds. I think they're saying that it's not.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
It doesn't.
Let me know, Angry Canuck, if I'm interpreting you right. I was under the impression, are they saying that, do you guys understand the point behind that? Was it that they're saying that it's not a new species, or are they saying something different?
They're saying that the intermediate between the wolf ancestor and the Dalmatian is a bloodhound, but that's not true.
We'll accept that. That's what they said. Whether or not it's true, that's what they said.
Nobody's saying that.
Well, the commenter said that.
The commenter, but it's not true.
You do know that certain purebred breeds today are derived from breeds that existed already, right?
The problem is you can't demonstrate any of those.
We can't demonstrate there are new breeds within like a lifetime?
There are dorgies. They're a mix between a dachshund and a corgi.
Yeah, you can mix dogs. That's not the problem I'm presenting.
I don't see the distinction.
You can't make a new breed though?
Mixing dogs and getting purebred dogs from like this nebulous hypothetical, there's a difference there.
New breeds is hypothetical?
Mixing dogs Yeah, that's real.
But that's how all breeds are born.
No, that's the thing. You haven't demonstrated this. Where is the intermediate between the wolf and the Dalmatian? You just said it's an abstraction. It's a number. It doesn't exist.
On
2
the
seconds.
diagrams.
Yeah, it exists on paper. It exists as lines on paper, but not in actuality.
No, we were saying that the diagrams are they have to extract it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That animal or population of animals didn't exist. That doesn't mean that they're
Like
fake.
it exists in people's minds. It don't exist in like fossils or a living ancestor. None of those.
Okay.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate It. What I'm going to try to do is first, let me try to make sure that John didn't get arrested. If he was like, man, I got arrested. I don't think he did. I think it's probably his battery went out. But Mr. Monster says, you missed my super chat. Mr. Monster, I know I for sure read one of yours, but if I didn't read, let me check and see if I can pull up if there's any that I missed. Sorry, folks. It's the YouTube thing that's making it really difficult right now.
Yeah, so I'm seeing that Dalmatians came from spotted Great Danes. Is that?
Yeah, that's been debunked. I can present you the source for that if you want.
So, but what's the problem conceptually that certain dogs come from other breeds?
I think the problem is just conception. It's just abstraction. That's the problem.
So where did they come from?
They were created according to me, but that's not the point of this debate, is it?
So poodles were created by gods?
My position, but not part of this debate, is it? We can debate that.
We're
That's
just
an
curious
interesting
to
topic.
ask.
So
It's hard. It's hard for us to know without knowing what your position is. It's hard for us to really argue back and forth.
Oh, I would say whether I believe in God is kind of irrelevant to this debate.
You know what? I want to debate that topic.
Sure.
We'll do it. Let's do it.
Do it on Snake's channel.
Yeah.
Let's
By
do
the way,
it on
plug
MDD.
for my debate channel, Debate Cafe. My
No,
partner
let's do
is
it
a
on
debate coach, and yeah,
Let's do it on MDD. I mean, this was fun.
sure,
I like people
whatever.
watching.
I like to collect niche, like real niche topics, though, for our channel.
I think James might find that interesting.
Yeah.
That might be the case. One is, Mr. Monster, I think you asked, you said that we didn't read your super chat on radiometric dating. That one actually we did read. So we got that one. And then Bitter Truth, I know that you had said that we missed 2 of yours. Let me know which ones they were, because I'm not positive. I might have missed yours, but I'm pretty sure I got all yours. But let me know if I missed anything. Bear with me, gents. Sorry about this.
So if anybody wants to debate whether Avatar: The Last Airbender is an anime, we're gonna host that debate.
What about Korra?
Yep, same. Yeah.
Same concept.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it depend how you defined anime? Some people
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess it's the animation style, but was Avatar animated by a Western animation company?
Save it for the debate, AJ.
Okay. I thought you were going to talk about James Cameron's Avatar for a second.
This one from
Well,
Bitter
that's
Truth.
definitely an anime.
Bitter Truth says, so this is BGG. In cell theory, what is the exact transport mechanism by which proteins travel through the Golgi apparatus?
Come again?
In cell theory, what is the exact transport mechanism by which proteins travel through the Golgi apparatus?
I have no clue.
Gotcha.
There's,
I thought you said incel theory, like a
Yeah,
theory
that's
of-
what I heard first, like incel theory.
That's tomorrow night. But let's
I know
see.
there's. I forget the exact details, but there's vesicles involved. It's been a while from my Golgi days.
It's been a while since I studied that.
Like, holy dang.
The incel theory.
Yeah, that's what I
Bitter
heard.
Truth.
It
If I
sounds
missed
like
any
something
Bitter
that
Truth, let me
exists.
know.
Oh, you know, Andrew Tate would probably fit that. King of incels.
I'm calling John
Just look
right
at him.
now.
He's like a Chad incel, which shouldn't be possible, yet there it is.
Maddox? I'm calling Maddox right now.
Well, I feel like the debate's pretty much over.
Yeah.
John didn't answer. I think he's in jail. But want to say thank you very much for your questions, folks. I just want to make sure that I got this last one, but it looks like they may have left. But
The debate that jailed John Maddox.
hopefully John's not in jail. But with that, thank you very much to our guests. It's been a fantastic time. I'll be back in just a moment with a post-credit scene, so stick around, folks, about updates about upcoming debates. And BGG, Atheist Jr., and Snake, a.k.a. Taylor, thanks so much for being with us, and we hope you have a great rest of your night.
Oh, that was fun.
God bless.